disaster of Joe Biden's presidency is often compared to that of Jimmy Carter's, both at the helm of radically left regimes running a country with no common sense. So how appropriate that an exploding situation with Iran could be what tanks Joe Biden's reelection, or at least part of what tanks Joe Biden's reelection. We saw the same with Carter during the Iran hostage crisis in 1979. Prior to the Carter administration, Iran was a Western-friendly nation. My mother grew up there, if you didn't know that. That's not her. Women were educated and people lived without the burdensome theocratic rule of the Quran and the chaos that we see today. Early in his administration, Carter embraced Iran's Shah, but after hostages were taken at the U.S. consulate, Carter caved to the radical Islamists that were taking over the country at the time. The revolution was happening. And many Republicans, including Henry Kissinger, believed that Carter sold the Shah out and basically sold out the way of life in Iran that had existed for decades before that. Since then, for the past 45 years, Iran has been run by radical Muslim extremists like that guy, who spend most of their time and treasure consolidating their own power, suppressing any possible freedom and right, and of course, attacking Israel, as we've seen for the last several months. And now, as it stands, we are still unsure if Israel will respond to Iran's attack over the weekend, but Joe Biden has made it clear that if they do, they are going to do it alone. So there's Joe Biden on this. Fkhrآور was a prisoner and was tortured by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard 25 years ago before he fled to the West. And Amir, it's good to have you back on the show. Joe Biden has followed suit with his Democrat predecessors, opening up billions of dollars for Iran to use to finance terror and all the chaos that we see. Your thoughts on how this administration is handling the Middle East?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Rob. How this administration is handling it. It's disaster, probably the most disastrous policy of all other presidents since Carter up to now. It's from the Biden administration. And it was started from Obama Biden administration, right, when Obama was infiltrated by Iranian lobby group in Washington, D.C. Believe it or not, Iranian regime, the mullahs, they have official lobby group in Washington, D.C. called NIAC, which they send a lot of their members inside the administration, inside the White House, inside the State Departments, at the Congress, and everywhere to make sure they can paralyze U.S. policy toward Iran. Then Iranian regime, IRGC, and its terrorist groups, the proxies, they can freely go around and just export their revolution, the very dangerous Islamic Marxist ideologies, which you can see it's funded right now by Biden administration. They're giving them billions of dollars.
Let me just pull up real quick. The Washington Examiner revealing 3 members of, you were just talking about this, a covert Iranian regime influence network visiting the White House 10 times between April 2022 and December of last year. And these people have these connections to this guy, Robert Malley, who we've talked about before on this show, Biden's former special envoy to Iran, who was suspended last June. It looks like he was a spy, effectively, for Iran in the Biden administration. I don't understand, why is there such a capitulation with Democrat regimes in this country and the mullahs in Iran?
The thing maybe you don't know about Robert Malley, he really loved Hamas. And he really liked Hezbollah and IRGC. He was telling in his interviews, you know, their political view is different from us. They are just normal. We should accept them. And this Robert Malley, I started to talk about Robert Malley on Newzmekс since last year for 2 years. And then when I met Congressman McCall here in Houston, I was telling him directly about the Robert Malley. And I said, just be careful about this guy, because this guy is selling United States secrets to Iranian regime. This is the same guy who was hired in his organization called International Crisis Group.
And there we see him.
He was hired by Iranian regime to draft JCPOA for Iran, and then was hired by Obama administration.
Deal. And you see him there. You see him there. You got Obama. You have John Kerry. He's in pictures with. You've got the Biden State Department. You've got Joe Biden. This is the envoy to Iran, and this is exactly how our foreign policy is just so despicable under this. And was Obama the same? And now with Biden the same? This is why we have chaos in the Middle East right now. Amir, we got to leave it there, but thank you so much. We appreciate it as always. Good to see you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Let's hope President Trump will come back with his amazing policy, maximum pressure toward Iran. Thank you so much.
That. Thank you, Amir. An Iranian-American attorney and activist going viral on social media for blasting the very clueless pro-Hamas crowd right now, which is currently calling for the annihilation of Israel while defending Iran's Saturday drone and missile attack on the Israelis. Take a look.
When we were screaming for the past 2 years that they were lynching us, where were you? When we were screaming that they were killing Iranian women for not wearing a hijab, where were you? When we were explaining that this is a terrorist occupying force, where were you? But all of a sudden, everyone's graduated from Instagram School of Law to say that this is a violation of international law and Iran has the right to defend itself.
Elika Laban joins us now. Thank you so much for coming on. I watched your speech there over the weekend. I thought it was fantastic. It points out so many of the flaws in I think the far left in this country, the Western far left. They right now are supporting the Iranian regime, in some way in its assaults on Israel, saying that that they're oppressed and this is how they're getting even. That's what's fashionable here among the Western left. How misguided are these people about the regime that controls Iran?
I mean, words can't even describe. I really support some of the words that my compatriot had to say just before me, Amir. You know, this isn't something that's new. This is something that has gone back a couple of decades in this country through this policy of what I call inclusive terrorism, which has been the foreign policy starting way back from Obama. And as you even mentioned, Carter, which I don't know that many people know. In 2016, the BBC revealed these declassified documents that showed correspondence between Khomeini and the White House, And so during this period that there's been an embracing and the empowering of this terrorist regime, and then simultaneously at the same time in these academic institutions that are funded by Qatar, the Islamic Republic, with no regulation over that, they're teaching that, the IRGC are the good guys, the Islamic Republic are the good guys that are just fighting, Western imperialism.
Unbelievable.
And what's interesting is if you look at the definition of imperialism, it is to extend a country's influence either by military force or through diplomacy. Now, this country has for decades engaged in diplomatic relations with this terrorist regime. When the Iranian people have repeatedly asked them not to do it, Obama went into the JCPOA, the nuclear deal, unfreezing $150 billion to this regime.
It's constant appeasement. That's what we've seen over and over again. Capitulation, appeasement to a regime that runs this country. And I just want to ask you, just to clarify for people, because a lot of people here in the United States don't follow Iran relations too closely. But these people that control the country for the last 45 years, they are not. This is not a government that's been elected. They have taken over this country. What percentage of people living in Iran actually support the regime that runs their country?
Well, the polls are showing about 15% are in support. Yeah, and about 85% are opposed. I mean, it's really not easy to say when you don't have a country that has that kind of democratic function or transparency to know. But it's very little support. And so that really just animates how completely off track, these Western leftists have become in supporting a regime that's oppressing the Iranian people, that is causing so much regional instability. And now they've painted the Islamic Republic, who has been an aggressor in the region through its proxies, either directly or indirectly, for decades, not just since October 7th. They've painted them as the victims and as the heroes in this story. And this is just jarring. It's truly jarring.
It's very jarring. It's even worse to know that the people that are in charge of our government know better, know exactly what they're dealing with, and for whatever reason continue to capitulate to these people. It's just mind-boggling. We got to leave it there. Elika Laban, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.